Hey guys, Chris here with How to Tesla. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about how to extend the range in your Tesla. One of the weirdest parts about buying an electric vehicle, regardless of who the manufacturer is you find that the estimated range that you should be getting isn't actually anywhere near what you get when you start to drive it. They base these estimates off perfect weather, and you're going down a perfectly straight line where there's no incline or decline, and that's just not realistic. You'll find that there is a fairly significant drop-off in real-world range that you actually get. So I want to give you some tips on how to get the most out of the range that you do get, and how to make it a little less painful as you drive your Tesla around. Now, personally, I drive quite a bit. I travel a lot for work. So I've got a lot of experience in experimenting and finding what works the best. And I just thought I would kind of share the sorts of things that seem to make an impact for me. So the first one will be tire pressure. In my climate where I live, we get very cold weather and also very warm weather in the Midwest. So I do find when the weather is really cold, you tend to get a lower tire pressure, and then as it heats up, even though you haven't changed your tire pressure, it actually gets higher because the air expands when the temperatures get warmer. When you have a lower tire pressure, you're going to get less range. You really want to just kind of make sure that you check it every so often. It's always a good idea to have one of those electric air pumps, I guess, that fill up your tire, or you can go to your local gas station, and a lot of them are free, where you can just set it to how where Tesla recommends the PSI to be, and then you can go ahead and top it off. So you don't want to go too high though, although you will get really good range. If your tire pressure is higher than what it should be, you actually get less traction on the road. So when it rains, or if you have snow, things like that, you're actually going to get worse handling as the tire fills up more and it's really full. You're going to have less of that tire actually making contact with the road. If you think about it, if it's lower, the sides are going to kind of come down, and you have more rubber actually contacting the pavement, which is going to make it great when it's snowing, but it is going to significantly reduce your range. The second thing that I found that can change the amount of range that you get are the rims that you have. The rims that you get with a Tesla, whether it's the aero wheels or the turbines, you really want to try to stick with those. They're lightweight, and then the actual design of the rims are to make it more aerodynamic. So if you do go with aftermarkets, try to make sure you don't go with ones that are too heavy, and try to keep a circular pattern to it, which tend more often than not to be better as far as range goes. The third thing that you want to kind of look out for is your air drag. You don't want to drive with your windows down. Depending on the temperature, you may want to, but it will affect your range. There's more air drag with the windows down. The air kind of comes in from the sides, and it creates a buffer, and it's going to slow you down. Same goes for having a roof rack. If you have a roof rack, it's going to impede the airflow, and it's going to give you less range. The fourth thing you probably want to look at is your battery life longevity. As you drive more and you own it longer, the actual amount of charge that your battery can hold is going to degrade over time. So you're going to find, like, where you used to get, say 300 miles, a few years down the road, you may only be getting 270. Different things that will affect the battery degrading are going to be charging it up to 100%. Apparently that's not good for the batteries. It will cause them to deteriorate a little faster. And then frequent supercharging, I guess the amount of power that goes into it isn't really conducive for battery longevity. And then also running the battery below 20%. I'm not really sure why that affects it, but from what I've heard, that's one thing that you want to be just cognizant of. So you really want to do what you can to drive it between 20 and 80% most of the time, and then just limit your supercharging as best you can. I I frequently charge it to 100% with my travels, and then I use superchargers over half of the time. Now I'm at like 37,000 miles, and I have very little degradation actually in my battery. So I don't know if I just got a really good one, if I'm pretty fortunate, or if the amount of stress people are putting on keeping your battery charged at normal levels, it may not be as significant as people would lead you to believe. I'm not 100% sure. I can only go based on my experience. And for 37,000 miles, I mean, that's what most people would take a year and a half to drive that much. And mine's have been very minimal, very minimal. The fifth thing that you should do to make sure that you can get the most amount of range out of your vehicle is going to be driving more conservatively. Now, I own a Model Y Performance. I love gutting it. I love flooring the accelerator when I use the on-ramps to get to the highway, and I'm not big into seeing how fast I can push it as far as top speed or anything. I'm not drag racing other people, but I do love the feeling of that acceleration. It's an absolute rush, and for those who own a Tesla or an EV, and you know that instant torque feeling, it's amazing. It really is. There's nothing else out there quite like it. However, if you do it a lot, you're going to notice that you don't get nearly the range that you do when you drive more conservatively. So getting in a situation where range is extremely important for a particular trip or something, my best advice, put it in chill mode and don't floor it. And keep the speed low. When you're above 70 miles an hour, it can really create a lot more air drag than what, the air only moves so fast away. So as you're going really fast, you're kind of pushing into the air. And the faster you're going, the harder that pushback from the air is. And it does significantly reduce your range. And I mean, you'll find like on a normal 300 miles, you might find you're getting, 8% less just based on your speed on highway driving. So I find that if I try to keep it between 60 and 70. I try not to go too often above 70, depending on what the traffic around me is doing. But I do find that when I go slower, even though it takes a little bit longer, I've definitely got much more charge than what I anticipated when I left. So drive more conservatively. That's a really, really good way to keep a good amount of range for your trip. So the next thing, tip number 6, I would say, is your regen braking. Do what you can not to use your actual brake pedal. Keep in mind that the regen braking does put more energy back into your battery. And I don't think that's a big issue for most people. I think most people use the regen braking as much as they can. And you'll find that it does help quite a bit. So tip number 7 would be keeping the weight down. I load up a lot of luggage in here sometimes, and I do get worse range when I've got quite a few extra pounds in the car. I'll carry a few gallons of water. I'll have 3 or 4 cases of luggage. I'll throw cat litter in the back in the winter to help me get unstuck if I get stuck in the snow. And those things will significantly reduce your weight. If there's no longer snow on the road and I take all this stuff out, I get quite a bit better range. And so the weight is actually quite important. You'll notice too, like if you're bringing 3 or 4 people in the car compared to when you're driving by yourself, your range will be affected fairly drastically by just going by yourself and keeping the weight down. Another thing that you'll find that you can experience less range because of is phantom drain. A phantom drain is basically the amount that your battery drains when you're not using it. So say you have a trip planned out and maybe you're going to a buddy's house and then you're going to come back, you stay the night and then come back the next day. Well, if you're dropping, say, maybe 10% while your car is just sitting idly and you're sleeping, you're going to have much less range because the battery dropped 10%. The ways that this happens First, keeping it in Sentry mode. That does drain the battery fair amount. And that's probably the most significant cause of the phantom drain. The Sentry mode, your cameras are continuously rolling, and the system's looking out for people coming up to the car. So that's a pretty big one. If you know it's going to be a safe area, you need the range. It's pretty important to you. You may want to consider, turning it off for the night. Another thing is checking your app really frequently, or using a lot of the third-party apps. I use a few of the third-party apps just to track battery performance, and I like to look at the little stats and details. It's kind of part of the fun of owning a Tesla is all the different numbers and weird stuff you can kind of look at that you don't get with a regular car, But every time you open up your Tesla app on your phone, it's going to actually wake up your car, which is going to use some battery, and you'll find that you can drain it kind of quickly if you're consistently checking on it, So another thing would be climate control. As you're driving, if you're blasting the heat or blasting the AC, you have it on all the way up to the highest setting or the lowest setting as far as temperature, and then you've got the fans maxed out. You can drain your battery pretty quickly. It's best to try to keep it about 72. At least that's what the energy app in your Tesla says. You want to try to keep it right around 72, so it's not really putting a lot of heat or cooling into the HVAC system. So you can also keep the fan as low as possible. You still want to be comfortable, but if you're in a situation where range is extremely important during that drive, you definitely might want to consider that. Number 10, and this is kind of a surprising one, but keep the outside as clean as you can. If you have a lot of mud and dirt on your car, it can actually affect your range. It was on an episode of Mythbusters where they had a car fairly caked in mud, and the aerodynamics was actually quite different when it was really, really dirty. I thought it was absolutely... At first, when I saw like the preview for it, I was like, nah, that can't actually happen. It's so little. You wouldn't really expect anything like that. But it turns out, scientifically, it's true. You'll actually have a noticeable amount of range taken off because of your car being dirty on the outside. And to be fair, who wants to drive a dirty car anyway? You invested in the Tesla, make that bad boy sparkle and look good, and try to make a few people envious. Why not, right? And then last, and probably one of the biggest, is going to be the wind and the weather. If you're constantly going up against winds where they're pushing up against your car, you will significantly lose some range. That's similar in gas cars too, but it's something that you typically don't think about. And one of the things I really love about the energy app in the Tesla is that it does show how forceful the winds are pushing against you and how much range it's caused you to lose. And I think it's actually pretty fascinating that, that the higher the winds, the more significant drop that you see in range. And ironically, if you have winds coming from behind pushing you or going forward with you, you're not going to get any sort of a drop as far as the range goes, which is nice. So it definitely goes both ways. But then with the weather, if you're in really cold or really hot weather, I would suggest while your car's still plugged in, if you plug in at home, preheat or pre-cool your car while it's still plugged in. This way you're using the energy from your energy source and not from the Tesla's battery. And then as you're driving, like in the rain or the snow, anything that puts some sort of a precipitation on the ground, you are going to notice a reduced range. Just trying to battle through the water, through the snow. It's going to create more of a resistance for your wheels to roll. And then also when it's really, really cold out, your battery will tend to try to warm itself up. It is more efficient when it's warmer. So it will precondition the batteries if you're going to charge just because of the cold. And that actually does use more energy to precondition that battery. So although it is going to be more efficient because it's warmer, it's still not enough to overcount the fact that it is using energy to precondition. So overall, you are going to come out with a loss in range due to just the temperature, which is unfortunate, but that's part of EV life. So I hope I gave you some good tips. Just I guess some stuff to sort of keep in mind. It's not nearly as bad as some people make it out to be as far as how low your range is compared to what they feel it should be. So mine was, I believe it was supposed to be 303 miles of range that I get. And on average, I probably get maybe 280, 290. So it's not that bad. And I live in the Midwest where I do get the extremes. And a lot of that too depends on some of my trips. Some of my trips are more downhill than uphill by quite a bit. But yeah, so I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll try to come and bring some more tips from a Tesla owner. And with that, hope you guys have a great day. Thanks.